Where's five? Sorry about this. Not in accordance, I did put,
Oh, it needs to go around it.
I got it, you, just gotta hit the button one more time. You're ready to go. You gotta push the button one more time, Mike. Just one time.
Button. Now I got a green button.
Green light.
Will everybody be able to hear? Can they all hear me now? Can you hear? Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, read from verse 5 down through verse 10, please.
But because of your callous stubbornness and unrepentant hearts, you are deliberately storing up wrath for yourselves on the day of wrath, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. He will pay back to each person according to his deeds. To those who do persist in doing good, seek unseen by certain heavenly glory, honor, and immortality, he will give the gift of life, of eternal life. But for those who are selfish, ambitious, and self-seeking, and disobedient to the truth, but responsive to wickedness, there will be wrath and indignation. There will be tribulation and anguish for every human soul who does evil, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. But glory and honor and inner peace will be given to everyone who habitually does good, to the Jew first, also to the Greek.
Okay, and verse 11, for there is no partiality with God. All right, this tells us here from Romans 2 that God will render to each one according to his deeds. Now, that's not anything new. Eternal life to those who are seeking glory, honor, and immortality. Those who are self-seeking, do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation, and wrath, tribulation and anguish on every soul of man who does evil, of the Jew first, and also to the Greek. What do you think he mentions to the Jew first there? What would be the possible reason for that?
Because by whom much is given, much will be required.
Mm-hmm.
Jews had more time to get ready for God than anybody else. They've been given more knowledge, more time, and everything else. So, of course, they're going to be held to a higher standard.
Right, they were the first in line for rewards and the first in line to be judged. And we can see how that played out when Christ was on the earth. His mission was to the Jews. He did not go to the Gentiles. I think Paul was the one who decided he was going to go to the Gentiles when the Jews rejected him, but rejected the word. So, mentions the Jew first, but also the Greek. Now, that's everybody. You got the Jewish people, and the Greek is everyone else. You're not a Jew, you're a Greek. That's the way he's categorizing it here, although they might be Roman or whatever, but if they're not Jewish, they're Greek. We talked about that a couple of lessons ago. All right. But God's wrath will come to all who do evil without respect to whether they're Jew or Gentile, because God is impartial in his judgment. And this is, remember, he's writing in Rome, he's writing to a congregation of people, a group of people who includes Jew and Greek. Some of the things he's saying to Jewish people here may kind of shock them a little bit, because I think they thought that they were, I hate to say, a little bit better than everybody else, but because they had received the blessings from God, I mean, they were God's chosen people. The law of Moses, which was given to them, and was not given, the law was not given to the Gentile people, it was just given to the Jewish people.
And the Jewish people were pretty unique too, in that they believed in one God, where most of the world at that time believed in a multitude of gods. You know, the Romans.
That's right.
They believed in all kinds of gods, so they couldn't help but feel like they got a leg up, you know, on the rest of the people, because we've been on the right track all along. You know, you guys are wondering about it. You know, I think that probably gave them a little bit higher self-esteem.
Yep. Yeah, we got to keep that in mind, that the Jewish people, by and large, looked down on, if you weren't Jewish, they looked down on you. They really think, you know, I'm better than you because I'm one of God's chosen people. I am better than you. And so that's something that Paul had to deal with, to tell them, you're not really any better than the Gentile in the sight of God. There's no partiality with God anymore, because now we're under a new system. We're not under the law anymore. We're under the law of Christ, which includes everyone.
This is my opinion, but I think that that's why God allowed the destruction of Jerusalem, the complete and utter destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, wiping out every semblance of what it was before. And that put the Jews, and that put them on the level playing field with the Greeks, okay? Because you can't trace your genealogy. You can't point that I'm a Levite or I'm from the tribe of Judah. You can't trace it. Every semblance of that is gone. And now you guys are just like the rest of us, and you better turn to Christ, okay? And I think that really leveled the playing field, you know.
It leveled it, yes. Someone read verses, please read verses 11 through 13.
For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. And the Gentiles which have not the law, who by nature do things contained in the law, these having not the law, are a law to do these things.
That's far enough. No partiality with God. And this is where it gets into a section of chapter 2 that I have a lot of faith in one particular commentator who studied Romans for years, who studied Paul for years. And he says what we're getting into here in these next few verses is a puzzle. Not clear. Not really clear maybe what Paul meant, but we'll get into that. As many have sinned without law will also perish without law. And as many have sinned in the law will be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God, but the doers of the law will be justified. Okay. Who's the people that sinned without law? Who's he talking about? The Gentiles. Okay. You want to
I was
comment?
gonna say something about those of us that have been in the military. When you go to the military, you arrive there the first day of basic training, they don't care where you're from. They don't care who your mama was or your daddy was, if you had plenty of money, if you had any money. They don't care if you're black, white, or purple, they don't care, none of that matters. They're gonna cut all your hair off, they're gonna give you the clothes they want you to wear, they're gonna give you the things they want you to do. And you can say, well, wait a minute, I'm always treated pretty good back home. So that's terrible, they're gonna treat everybody the same. And that, I think that we can, people that have been through that, being son, John, Leland, you can understand that. You know, you've seen that firsthand. Wow, I don't know where I stood in the ranking before, but right now I'm the same with everybody. And that's kind of deflating, to tell you the truth, when you get there. It's kind of deflating. And I think it's kind of uplifting for the kids that maybe didn't have anything. That they get lifted up with the ones that let them a little something, not money, but, you know, love and attention. They get inflated, others get else.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of more verses, and then I'm going to read it from a different translation. For when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do things in the law, these, though not having the law, are a law to themselves, who show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and between themselves their thoughts accusing or else excusing them in the day when God will judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ, according to my gospel. All right. He's already said in the previous verse, that that there was two standards of judgment, one at this time, up to this time, one for the Jew, one for the Gentile. How was the Jew to be judged? How was he to be evaluated? By what? By the law. As to whether he was a doer, this says because he was a doer of the law, not hearer only. But the Gentiles, they didn't have the law. So how are they going to be judged? And that's, if you look at, I guess it's verse 15 or 16, it has to do with their conscience bearing witness. Your conscience. That's a law. He says that's a law. They don't have the law, but they are a law to themselves who show the work of the law written in their hearts. Their conscience is bearing witness. They don't know all the law. They're not following all the law. But by nature, they do some things that are contained in the law. And their conscience is very important because their conscience, that leads people, you know, if you know the right thing, say you know the right thing to do and you do it, your conscience is good. But if you know something is wrong and you do that, then your conscience hurt. And he's kind of saying that the Gentiles let the conscience be their guide. I want to read something from a different version here because I think it's pretty good about this particular one. And it starts with verse 12. Just listen closely. The Gentiles do not have God's law that he gave to Moses. If the Gentiles do wrong things, God will punish them. But he will not use his law when he judges the Gentiles. But the Jews do have God's law. So if the Jews do wrong things, God will use his law to judge them. The law will show that they have done wrong things. Who does God accept as right with himself? It's those people who obey his law. It is not the people who only know his law but do not obey them. The Gentiles do not have God's law. but they may still do the right things that the law teaches. They do right things because of what they themselves think is right. In that way, they're showing they have a certain law in their minds, even though they do not know God's law. Those people show that they know what is right. It is as if God has written his law deep inside them. Their thoughts tell them the difference between what's right and what is wrong. Sometimes their thoughts say you did something that's wrong, and sometimes their thoughts say you did what is right. That is the message that I tell people. God knows everything that people think secretly. One day he will judge everyone. He has given Jesus Christ the authority to do that. Now, and new apps on your phone, which may be a very good app to have, is called Bible Gateway. You can get that in your app store. Doesn't cost anything. But in there, you can look up any scripture you want to, and you can see it in that verse. You can just keep punching these different translations. You can read it in 25 different translations if you want to. It's an excellent study guide for people. It's called Bible Gateway. That's a little bit off the subject, but I thought I'd mention that because I did change from the King James to that version that I read from.
I believe the Bible tells us, and I believe with all my heart, we are made in the image of God. Okay? I believe that people all over the world, whoever knows that it's wrong to hurt a child. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you would know that it's wrong, for instance, to rape a woman and she's screaming and hollering and pleading not to do that. You would know that. People did it anyway a lot of times. But you know that's wrong, okay? You don't have to have the Ten Commandments over here looking at, to read. Well, I didn't break that rule, You don't have to have that. There's nothing about raping a woman in the Ten Commandments, But you know it's wrong because you were made in the image of God. Even the Gentiles knew the things they did was wrong. They knew they were wrong, even without the law. That's what I think that's what wrong is. They knew better than their English 1 says in chapter 2. They're inexcusable, man, because they knew better. You know better. You know better. You know if a little child sitting out in the middle of this street out here, you're going to pick it up. It's 1 year old. It's sitting there in the road. It's going to get hit by a car. You know, I know, everybody knows. We don't have to have the Ten Commandments to tell us to go get that child and save him. Okay?
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what he said. The Jews, you had the law and it told you what to do. The Gentiles did not have the law, but you still knew what to do because you were made in God's image.
Because they do, and that's to their credit, correct? That's God's going to, if I know something that's right to do, and I try my very best to do it. I'm talking about I'm a Gentile here. I don't have the law of Moses, but I've got this law written inside my heart that tells me what I need to do and what I don't need to do. And it seems to me to be saying that if that's the case, that when God judges the secrets of men by Jesus Christ, that they can be justified through their conscience. They didn't have the law. Yep.
They got the law back. Everybody has the law. I know the people before.
Yeah, I'm talking about people before. I'm not before the gospel is in effect. These are people who lived before. And I think that's the one that Paul is talking about. Joanne?
Okay. Romans was written in 57 AD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It would appear to me, and I may be wrong about this, so I'm just throwing this out as discussion question, okay? It would appear to me, as I have read it in the New International Version,
Mm-hmm.
and as I have listened to you read the other version that you have read, that Paul was writing to people
who had already been baptized, who knew about Jesus. And that he's talking about, I'm going to use current day people, that this could pertain to current day people who, in addition to those before Christ. Because why would he write that about, why would he be writing this about people who were in the past? Because he's talking to the people who are currently present and those who are in the future.
It's hard to know whether Paul is talking about the past, the present, or the future. That's the puzzle of this verse. What's he talking about exactly?
I think Paul was talking to everybody then, now, and I think it doesn't matter when, whether we're here at the end or there. Paul was saying, you, O Jew, you're nothing special. You Gentile, you're nothing special. You have to follow Jesus. If you break the law under the Jewish covenant, you're going to answer for that. The Gentiles, if they break the law, even though they don't have the law of Moses, you still got Jesus. You still got the commandments of Jesus. He's saying the law does not, the prophets you know. Everyone will be judged, whether you're Jew or whether you're Gentile, by doing what is right. And it fails no one nothing either way. Everyone is on equal footing, is what we're saying.
Okay.
Can I?
Mhm.
You didn't exactly answer my question, okay? So according to my Bible, verse 16, it says, this will take place on the day when God judges men's secrets through Jesus Christ, as the gospel declares. Okay, so this is going, as I understand it, this is going to be taking place when we all stand before God. And the Jews are going to be judged by the Jewish law. The Christians are going to be judged by the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. I mean, that's the way it sounds to me whenever I read this.
The Jewish law was dead, because in a couple of years, the temple is going to be destroyed, the sacrifice is going to be, no one can claim to be a full Jew now because they're not following the law. It's impossible to follow the law. After 70 AD, it's done. So everybody's going to have to answer. But he's saying here, if you want me, it's saying that everyone has to come to Christ, and you will be judged by that. If you want to be a Jew, and you want to stay under the Jewish law, you're going to have to live up to it, which no one can. No one can.
Okay.
Joanne, why would you freak for 1 second that God's law and that God's judgment will not be righteous? I don't care what,
Yes.
if you lived 6,000 years ago, if you lived 2,000 years ago, or if you live today, God's judgment will be perfect. It will be righteous. You won't have to say, well, you're treating him better, you're treating him different. That's not fair. There's going to be no fair. It's going to be completely fair. And so we don't need to fret about this. Who's he right? Technically, who's he? That's waste of time, okay? I don't know how the Jews should have known to do right. I don't know how the Gentiles should have done. I'm just going to quiz myself to death about this. I just don't think it's necessary. God will allow Jesus Christ and his work to judge us all. And it'll be perfect. The poor little remnants in World War II that jumps on the hand grenade and saved 16 of these guys that was drunk 2 weeks ago in Paris and flew around the women. Jesus will judge that one. It's not for me to judge. It's not for me to fret about. Jesus says, the greater love and know and lay that life for his friends. Let Jesus take care of it. But those of us that know what the Bible says, we need to do what it says. And that's why I'm not going to fret 1 second about it. I don't know if the judgment will be fair, because that's fool's there.
Well, I think the judgment's going to be very fair.
Right.
I mean, the standard that's going to be applied to Christians is going to be very fair. The standard that is applied to the Jewish people is going to be very fair.
Absolutely.
Now, whether or not he judges the Jews by the Jewish law does not make any difference. no, I don't need to say that, let me think, no, I want to say that. I mean, it would pertain to them. We have the Bible, it's going to pertain to us. Do you follow what I'm saying? We're going to be judged by what we.
Right.
by
That's
what
why
we
when you come,
have.
that's why when you come to the knowledge of the truth, you need to obey it, believe it, and obey it. That's your ability. You work out your salvation for your children. You work out your salvation, not Grandpa Moses who lived 200 years ago. You can't help Grandpa Moses. God will judge him perfectly.
Yeah.
The era he lived in, the things he lived. God will judge somebody 800 years ago. The Vikings from 1,000 years ago. God will judge everybody fair and square. And that's all. I think that's all we have to think.
I think the key verse there is the last thing said, verse 16 that you're talking about. On the day when, as my gospel proclaims, God will judge the secrets, all the hidden thoughts and concealed sins of men through Christ Jesus. So Jesus is, if someone is not baptized, they're going to go to heaven, they're going to stand before God, but they're going to carry all their sins with them. They're going to have to justify, their lives will have to balance out between all their evil that they've done and all the good. I don't know how God's going to do this. The same way with the Jews. They're going to have to answer, that's going to have to balance out. I don't have to worry about it. Jesus, I'm going through Jesus. So, we ain't got nothing to worry about. The Jews, the non-Christians, the Gentiles, they all going to have to be balanced. And I don't know what God's scale is. I don't know how much good it takes, how much bad it takes. I don't know how much righteousness takes to wipe out one sin. But Bible, Kevin said, God says, no sin can enter in heaven. I'm not going up there the rest of my life. I'm baptized in Jesus Christ. I don't have to worry about it. I'm going straight in.
I think the simple version here is man's going to be judged by his deeds, whether
Yeah.
Jew or Gentile, and there was something for him to follow at that time, and he's going to be judged that way.
That's right. I want to read something here. God will judge everyone according to where they are, not to where they are not. Those outside the law will be judged that way. Those inside will be judged by the law they possess. A new category of Gentiles was being created by the gospel itself. A category of Gentiles who have God's law written on their hearts by the Holy Spirit and who are coming to know in a new way what the law requires. The main point, true justice from God will be done and will be seen and known to be done. All right?
There won't be a soul in heaven that says, oh, poor Uncle Harry, he should have made it,
You know,
and he just get to it. That's never going to happen.
you
You're
know,
not going to miss those people. You're not going to think about those people. Justice will be served.
what's interesting at this time that Paul is writing to the Romans a letter that's going to be sent to them, something that they can read. They may not have had anything in print to read at all before. This Romans was written about AD 57. According to what I read about Mark, was probably written, the first gospel was written a little bit after that. And then you've got Mark, you got Matthew and Luke and John all coming after this writing. So they didn't have that to go by. So a lot of this stuff we have the advantage of having the Bible to read, which New Testament to read, which they did not have. And so I think they were doing the best they could do. We're talking about conscience. I want to say something. We were eating breakfast this morning, and I was thinking about the class. I was thinking about conscience. And Joanne says, we got a plant out here on the deck. It's about so tall. Said there's a bird building a nest in that plant. What shall I do about it? And I said, well, if it's in the way, you get rid of it. And she said, no, I can't do that, because if I did, it would hurt my conscience if I did it. So we got to be real careful to not hurt conscience. Now, but I want to ask you another question. We talked about how God will judge. What about the person who has, we're told, they were told to go preach the gospel. He that believeth and is baptized, and he that believeth not shall be condemned. And in another reading, it says, how can they believe in whom they have not heard? And I don't know exactly where that's from, but that popped in my mind. They hear without a preacher. Where do the people stand who have never heard?
I've heard a great example. I can't remember the preacher that I've heard it from, but I've used it a time or two. And he says, imagine a guy on the plains of Africa who's never seen the Bible, never read the Bible. He goes to God. I didn't have God. I didn't know about that. I didn't know this was right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And God plays back where he comes in and tells his wife, that Chapo's an evil man. He cheated me. He did me. You have nothing to do with Chapo. You knew right from wrong. You knew good from evil. You knew to tell the truth. You knew to do all this stuff. You did not know. The Bible tells us God has put enough of himself in every man that we are without excuse. Everyone knows that God created this world. This world, I didn't come from a tree. I didn't come from a wet guy. You can't look at this world and think to yourself that this just happened.
Yeah.
And God says he's put enough in there that we are all without excuse. We all know better. We all know right from wrong. We all know what evil is.
But the person who, I will say that, let me say something. This is good discussion we're having. I may bring up things for discussion, but don't put me in a pigeonhole saying Mike believes that or Mike believes that. That's not fair to me. I like discussion. Don?
In Colossians chapter 1, verse 23, that the gospel has been preached to every creature under heaven. That's right. At one time. Now, obviously, that was a different world that we have now. But to me, it's implying that it's out there. And I know people want to use that argument, that so-and-so didn't hear it, but
The gospel is, I'd say right now with the technology that we have, the internet and cell phones and whatever, that you can reach more people now than probably any other time in history. Two ways to look at this. And I think we've already come to the conclusion that God is a just God and God will do what is right. And I told Shelby Roy I was going to use him as an example. I'm going to do that right now. To kind of illustrate my point that I'm making, there's two ways to look at it. You can be real strict or you can be lenient. Shelby Roy is going to try to make some more money. What can I do to make some money? So he decides, okay, I'm going to, in my backyard, I'm going to put a pig pen. I'm going to raise pigs. I'm going to put Debbie in charge of it. But so he does that. Has a whole bunch of pigs in his backyard, fenced in. Well, you ever been around pig pens? They don't smell too good right after a while. So it's not too distant future. Neighbors began complaining about the smell coming from the Hopkins backyard. One of these citizens goes down south and says, what am I going to do about this situation here? He's here in the city limits of Stanford and got a pig pen in the back. It's smelling up the whole neighborhood. And so with that in mind, they go down and summon Shelby Roy to appear in court. And the judge says, did you know that there is a law on the books here in the city of Stanford that you cannot have a pig pen in the city limits? Shelby Roy says, no, I didn't know. I had no idea. I had no idea that existed. And the judge said, that doesn't make any difference. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. You could have come down here and asked. Now, you have broken the law here in Stanford. You have broken that law. Even though you did not know about the law, you've broken it. Therefore, I will give you the maximum sentence, 10 days in jail and a $500 fine. And you are to go home and clean up that pig pen. Get rid of it. And then say Shelby Roy appeals that, and another judge comes in to rule on him. And he says, well, I've been looking over your record here. You're an outstanding citizen. This is your first offense. You say you didn't know about the law, and I trust that you didn't know about it. So we're going to forget about the jail time. We're going to forget about the fine. Just go home and clean it up. So we got a lenient sentence over here, really no sentence, plus a sentence over here. Now, which one would we say, which one would you say was fair to you? The second one, right? Yeah, you probably complained a lot about that 10 days in jail and $500 fine. So that's the two ways to look. Will God be strict in judging the person who did not know about him and about Christ, or will God be lenient? And one thing about it, we don't have to decide that issue. That's not up to us to decide that. But what is our obligation as Christians? What is our obligation?
To go into all the world, preach the gospel.
Yeah, to get the word out to as many people as possible. That's why we have missionaries, why we have world radio, and all the different means we have to try to reach people, to teach them the gospel. That is our goal, and we will let God take care of the judgment part.
And if we did that and we're successful at it, the wars and the rumors of wars and the famine and stuff would go away. If everybody accepted Jesus Christ, what a wonderful world this would be. You throw locks away, throw all the prisons away, don't need them anymore. There's no stealing, there's no raping, there's no pillaging, there's none of that. But we are told to go and to teach. Now, everybody's not going to accept it. That's
No, not everyone will accept it, and not every person will be reached either.
keep us from trying.
Uh,
Insistence on going.
you may not.
His ways when he says, those who do right, those who do the law, those who do the word, and don't do it will be punished severely with many stripes. Those who didn't know and don't do it will be beaten with a few. So if you don't go through Jesus, it doesn't matter. You're going to be, whether you claim ignorant or not, God says, if you don't do what is right, if you break my standards, my moral, you're going to be punished. Ignorance doesn't play a part in it.
That's the whole point, I think, of Romans 2 up to this point, and I guess this is a good place to stop right here. And
So I just want to close with this comment again. Would Jesus put people, and if the gospel is salvation, and I know he has the power to judge and everything, but if he put people here and the way to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ, in my opinion, just like Colossians 1 says, they have got to hear somewhere. I don't believe Jesus will call people up for judgment and they